Happy 4th of July from the Fox Valley Film Critics to everyone who's watching. In this special holiday episode, we're going to be discussing two patriotic films. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome to the show, brought to you by Gripthink Productions and FVTV. Joining us for this special super patriotic episode is AJ. Feeling happy as usual. Take your pinwheel. You can just tell how much patriotism is like boiling off of him right now. Tell us about yourself today, AJ.
The things we do for friends. Well, I'm AJ.
As everyone's aware.
And I'm American.
Begrudgingly so.
And yeah, I can't wait to get out of this.
You're welcome to take the hat off now. You've made the joke.
Oh, thank goodness. Foam is sweaty.
That it is. So today we're going to be discussing two patriotic films, and knowing you being the uber patriot that you are, I thought you were utterly perfect for this discussion.
Oh, sure. You know, I've spent some time outside of the country, so those experiences have kind of shed a new light on my native country. And yeah, so much love for America. So much love.
And so we'll start with your film first. And for your patriotic film, you decided you wanted to go with Miracle.
With Miracle, yes. This is actually something I'm very excited about. I am a big sports fan as well as a movie fan. So whenever they combine, I almost always like them. I love sports movies. And this, I think, is one of the best ones. It's about the 1980 U.S. Olympic team, hockey team, and it chronicles the kind of rise to the team that became the Miracle on Ice team.
Sure. Like, I'm not overtly familiar with a lot of sports, because we live outside of Chicago, which is Blackhawk Central. So obviously, some of it kind of rubs off on you a little bit in terms of what you can get out of hockey, because that's kind of our big team right now, other than the Cubs, and the White Sox too. But
well,
not for a while. But so yeah, we got a lot of hockey discussion, and I grew up in a very sporty household, so I heard a lot about the Miracle on Ice from 1980 Olympics, and obviously there's the overt America versus the Soviet Union deal, which is kind of, from having grown up in a Cold Warrior house, it's kind of wonderful. But I'd never seen this film before last night, so it's kind of interesting watching it play out and getting to see this film. So
well, sure. I mean, this at the time it really embodied the cultural sentiment of the time of us versus them. It's our boys versus their boys, and it really did sum up in a hockey game two cultures clashing.
In a way that's slightly more mature than the subsequent film we're going to be discussing, but
only slightly.
Slightly, yeah. Oh, just a wee bit. But it's fascinating just kind of what the film approaches it from, because it's Kurt Russell is the coach of this, like, I don't know if it's not a small town hockey team. He's like the American Olympic coach.
He was coaching a college team in Minnesota, I believe.
Well, why is he picked specifically? Like,
well, he had experience. He had played for the 1960 hockey team, I believe, that didn't win the championship. I think there was some sort of there was a story behind all of that I don't quite remember. But he was picked because he was a good coach, and he had kind of a radical idea to. Well, I guess you kind of have to set up. At the time, professional athletes weren't allowed to play Olympic hockey, so they couldn't choose, the best players from the NHL at the time.
They all got sucked up into like American and Canadian leagues. So
yeah, and so they had to choose they had to build a team out of amateurs essentially. They played in college or whatever, or semi-professional hockey, but they weren't the quote unquote best of the best. But Kurt Russell, Herb Brooks in this movie proved that it's better to create a team and build them into a unit than to just have a team of all-stars to just run or skate around the ice together, one-upping each other. He built a team that worked together, knew each other, performed together, which is really what hockey is all about. It's a true team sport.
Yeah, it's the majority of the film is ultimately about his training methods, about him kind of whipping the team together and getting them to kind of get to a point where they can actually compete against the Soviets. Because I think it's mentioned that the Soviet team is like undefeated. They've like gone 40 games. They've won 40 games of the past 40 they've played.
Oh, they were titans.
Yeah, it's kind of insane, but it's kind of a wonderful little film. Like I was a little lost for some of it because I'm not overtly familiar with a lot of hockey, so a lot of the film is just them training and kind of they're butting heads about strategies and kicking players off the team and trying not to kick players off the team, and a lot of it just comes down to how they assemble this team together, what kind of skills they can build, like and how hard they train to develop their skills just so they can get that one chance because. They only have one opportunity to beat the Soviet Union on the ice, and they have to kind of get there. And that last 15 minutes they're on the field is like really tense. Like it's really fascinating.
It really is. Every hockey scene in this movie is exceptionally shot, I think. And while it could be said that it's a formulaic sports movie, it just has that kind of emotion behind it that maybe can only come from a real-life story that so many people were affected by on a personal level, because this was America's team.
What year was Miracle? What did your Miracle come out?
2004.
Okay, I wasn't sure exactly because Kurt Russell, I could imagine this is like 90s Kurt Russell, so it was that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and the actors that played the hockey players in this movie were actual hockey players. So the hockey that was shot, the action scenes, I guess you could say, are very real. Those are real hockey players skating out there and playing.
That's interesting. Like I was having that thought when I was watching the movies. Like these are some exceptionally like realistic hockey scenes. You got to think there are people who know sports like to a T, and they would be just going through every frame of the film, just looking for inaccuracies in this. So you got to think that they were like, we have to plan these scenes around the actual like routes the players took when they played the game. So the amount of like preparatory like thought and concern that went into kind of preparing how they were going to shoot this must have been absolutely insane.
Well, I mean, I can imagine that just on an acting level, hockey is possibly the toughest sport out there. Just physically grueling. To have to act on top of that is, hats off to the actors in this movie, because they really worked at it and it paid off. It's a very powerful movie. It's got one of the best sports locker room speeches, I think, of movie history, and then the climax is just euphoric.
Yeah, I like that there's that spiel in the middle of it, like when they're at the Christmas party, and you start hearing, I don't know who that was on the radio, but it's like it's a politician, I assume, giving a radio broadcast about like the state of the country. Like we were talking a while back when we did our episode on Star Wars about how the late 1970s was a very cynical and chaotic time, and you get the sense that a sports event was kind of part of that cultural zeitgeist of, we need to feel better as a nation again. We need to kind of get victories and kind of build our sense of national identity back again. And you get the way people talk, you get the sense that this isn't just like we're snubbing the Russians. This is like we're building our national pride back.
Yeah.
After everything that's happened this decade.
And I think the movie does an excellent job of not only capturing the sports action and what it meant for this underdog team to beat one of the best hockey dynasties at the time, but it also captures that cultural impact perfectly.
Yeah, totally. That's, as I said, it was tumultuous. You need the victory. When was you said you've seen this film before? Because I had not seen this film before.
Yeah, a few times. I think about every Winter Olympics, my dad and I will sit down and watch this. It's a favorite of his, and so it became a favorite of mine.
Family tradition?
Yeah, well, at least him and I. I don't think my mom and my sister were much interested, but my dad and I absolutely love this.
Yeah, I'm sure. Like, I would say it's one of those sports movies you can watch when you aren't overtly familiar with it.
Sure.
Like, there aren't that many sports films I'm terribly drawn to just because I'm not a sports sort of guy, but this is definitely one of them. So anyone who hasn't seen Miracle, you definitely should. That's all for this segment. Join us in the following segment where we'll be discussing my submission for the patriotic film. Stay tuned.
Does this help at all?
Anything helps, ma'am. Just try to get some sleep now.
I can't sleep.
Yeah, me neither. I'm on my way.
Good coffee, huh? Oh my God! What are you doing in my apartment?
The history of our country has been a long and tumultuous one, but it's ultimately one that we can take pride in. We've had a lot of accomplishments, and despite a lot of our mistakes as a country, we've managed to create a country that's very unique in the history of the world. And through all those conflicts, we strived to define ourselves and to create the best version of our country and our ideals. And sometimes, a lot of times that's very much expressed through art. And I think very few films truly express the true conflict of what it means to be an American, quite like Rocky IV does. AJ, what are your thoughts on Rocky IV?
What an intro. Rocky IV
Taking the
is
glove off, by the way.
probably the most 80s camp movie in existence. Which is not to say that's bad, but my word is it doesn't just beat you over the head with rah rah America. But you seem to love it.
You see, I consider this might be the greatest film of all time.
Oh my God. Yeah, where was this on the AFI list?
Probably 200,005. But so I was talking the other day to Groupthink Productions executive producer who was just on for the Searchers segment in the last episode, and he was actually like early 20s at the time the film came out, and he went to go see it on a date, and he described the experience of seeing this film in the theaters as nonstop laughing.
Yeah, yeah.
Which I think is a fair summary, because the film essentially drains all of what made the Rocky movies interesting about the humble boxer raising up from nothing. Now, as he's introduced, he's already an accomplished celebrity, and he has decided to take upon himself the weight of the entire Cold War to prove. He got to prove to himself that he can and represent his country and take down the Soviet boxer and his Soviet boxing science.
First of all, let's go easy on the word film here. This is it's a motion picture that was released. film's a bit of a stretch,
It's art, darn it.
if you say so. It's got a robot that's just there.
What? There's a robot that's hanging out in Rocky's house.
It's just there. It's
No,
is
it's
it a
Paulie's
servant?
house, right?
Is it a friend?
It's Paulie's house, right?
I don't know.
It's Paulie. It's his friend.
Who can
it's
tell?
Paulie.
But yeah, if you drag enough logs up a snowy mountain, you can beat communism. that's this movie.
It does have the best speech in any film ever. If he can change, then all you can change. And he manages to get the entire stadium full of Soviet boxing champions to root for Rocky for some reason.
Oh, because he's Rocky. It only makes sense.
Yeah, he's such an underdog that he beats the crap out of the Russian guy, and the entire Soviet Union decides they're going to stop being communists because of this one guy. So.
He beats the guy that is basically scientifically bred to win at boxing.
They measure his punch, and his punch is 3 times stronger than the average boxer just because of science.
It's deadly. He's deadly, and Rocky takes probably scores of punches from him, and he's just standing there. He's fine.
Can we talk about the most graceful death in the history of cinema?
That
is the death scene of Apollo Creed.
I will give this movie. That scene is very emotional. Led in by the great James Brown, and
I must say, the most graceful way to possibly kill this very important character in cinema. He dies brutally in the rings.
which I mean does kind of spark the movie, and obviously you get Rocky's guilt of not throwing in the towel, even though Creed was telling him not to. Creed needed to prove to himself that he still was the great man he once was, and when that doesn't exactly pan out for him.
Well, a lot of his arc is just the fact that he feels inferior to Rocky, though. Like he's frustrated that no one respects him like they do Rocky, so he decides.
You don't see Apollo walking around with a servant robot.
The entire subtext of the film is about ego.
Yeah.
His ego is bruised, so he gets into the fight and dies, and then Rocky's ego gets bruised, and he goes and beats up the Soviet Union. So
it's an experience. I think it is really an excellent choice for a 4th of July movie, because it is one of the most blindly American movies ever. In a very great way.
Your sheer patriotism is just boiling through right now. But yeah, I don't know. I'm so shameless about my love for terrible films.
That you are.
Yeah, I loved watching this so much. Even I love how once you get past the first movie, every soundtrack just turns into 80s power ballad music. It's push it to the limit. It's just
man, the montages in this are exceptional.
Yeah, it's just insane what they choose for the music for these movies. It's I think Eye of the Tiger was in the 3rd one, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
Why are they picking all these songs? It's I don't
Hey, Eye of the Tiger is fantastic.
Oh, Eye of
it
the
drives that movie. It's a plot point.
Fair enough, but it's not.
I actually kind of like Rocky 3. I do like Rocky 4. Neither of them are the worst Rocky sequel by any stretch.
What's the worst Rocky sequel?
Rocky 5.
I haven't seen that one yet.
Oh, it's bad.
You know what? I will say this. I'm really glad they referenced this in Creed. They referenced the death of Apollo in Creed.
Oh yeah. Well, it's canon.
Well, yeah. It's you can't get rid of the canon of this franchise, but I can imagine a much more restrained director or much less restrained director being yeah, we're not going to even mention it. It's just going to be his son shows up, and we're not even going to mention the fact. Well, they mention he dies, so he died in the ring. So that's kind of a good thing for that movie to do.
Yeah, and it builds Adonis as a character in the movie Creed, which is an excellent movie. If we're talking Rocky,
second best Rocky film, probably.
I would say so, right behind the original. I wish we could be talking about the original right now. That's a fantastic movie, but alas, here we are, talking about Rocky 4.
Well, Rocky is a very patriotic film, like the original one. It's kind of right at the middle of 70s-esque art films and 80s patriotic blockbusters, where you can definitely tell that there's an undercurrent of this is the kind of country we live in where the average guy can come up and face the biggest fighter in the world, and it's not overt, but it's there, and I think that it's kind of sweet in that first movie.
Oh, sure.
It just becomes more overt over time as Sylvester Stallone becomes 80s action man and his ego inflates out of control.
I can't get enough of how in every Rocky movie he defeats all the odds to win the fight against this, whether it's Mr. T, whether it's Dolph Lundgren, whether it's Carl Weathers?
Carl Weathers, yeah.
It is. Okay. And yet somehow they keep managing to find a bigger, badder foe.
He never stops being the underdog.
He's always the underdog. He's the champion of the world and still somehow an underdog.
It made sense in the second film. Can I just say how weird it is that this franchise has so many sequels? Maybe this is just like the onset of being right at that moment of time where they could do lots of sequels, but I can't imagine any other boxing movie getting this many sequels. Imagine Raging Bull with a plethora of sequels.
Oh, that's a different breed entirely of boxing movies. Boxing is only kind of a
what I mean.
Subplot of that movie.
Yes.
That's
Same with Rocky though, even to a degree. Like think of how many other 80s, 70s movies would be made much worse if they had 6 sequels.
Well, I think the way I would compare and contrast Rocky is the more personal home scenes of Rocky are surrounding the fight, whereas in Raging Bull, the fight scenes kind of reflect what's going on in his personal life.
I'd give you that. I'd say that's definitely true. They're definitely very different movies functionally.
And both amazing.
Sure. But
And so is Rocky IV in its own way.
I'll say this: watching the Rocky, I've seen 2 and the only sequels I've seen so far are 2, 4, and Creed. But watching the sequels after seeing the first one, I was surprised by how much I liked them, even though they're all inferior to the first film. There's all like a spark there. There's always a spark that makes them interesting to watch.
Rocky's such a magnetic character. He embodies the underdog. I don't think movies have ever captured that underdog feeling like they have in any Rocky movie.
They don't sustain it very well, but they definitely captured it for a moment.
Sure. and yeah, he really is. Everybody loves an underdog, and it doesn't get better than Rocky.
That's why there are so many Chicago Cubs fans. But yeah, it's okay. I'm from a nihilistic Cubs fan house, so it's fine.
Well, there's not a whole lot to be nihilistic about
Well, up until
anymore.
last year, yes, but
You'll still find a reason.
just wait another 100 years. Anyway, that's it for our discussion on Rocky IV. Thank you so much for following us this episode. We want everyone to have a happy 4th of July. You can follow me on Twitter at NASocialCritI. You can find more of our reviews at the NASocialCritic.tumblr.com and past episodes for the show at the Groupthink Productions YouTube page. I'm Tyler with the Fox Valley Film Critics. Have a good day.